It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Conversations with Joan. Conversations with Joan will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life's Conversations with Joan. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Conversations with Joan focuses on topics that are important to your life, from health and wellness to professional development to personal well-being. Change makers join me to share their insights, tips, and strategies so you can thrive and live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. Now, let's start talking. It's not easy raising children. Just when you think everything is on track, the unpredictable will happen. Whether it's a child facing an illness, bullying, or academic struggles, how can we navigate challenges when life doesn't go as planned? Today's guest, Allison Carmen, offers parents a powerful and uplifting tool called the Maybe Mindset to help them navigate the unknown with greater ease and renewed hope. She joins us today to discuss the gift of maybe and how it can help us maintain a positive outlook. Allison is a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and podcaster. Her new audiobook is Maybe Everything is Okay, A Parent's Guide to Less Stress and Worry. Welcome, Allison. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Joan, thank you so much for having me.
Allison, I want to begin by talking about the Maybe Mindset. What is it, and why do you believe it's so powerful?
I think the maybe mindset is so powerful because most of us are afraid of uncertainty. When we don't like what's happening in our lives, when things are challenging, we can't imagine them changing or getting better. So we look at uncertainty as our enemy, as it's something that's against us. And we forget that uncertainty has potential. It has things that are beneficial. And so this idea of maybe reminds us of the possibilities that exist in any given moment and our future that nobody knows, but just because we don't know doesn't mean it's bad.
Why do you think so many people are afraid of the unknown? Why are we afraid of change?
Because we all want to be okay. And we equate knowing we're okay with these expectations of how our life needs to be. And we can understand that, right? Because everybody wants to make sure they could afford their home, they could afford their card payments, their kids are going to be okay. So when things happen in life that we didn't expect, or something challenging is going on, we get overwhelmed and we're afraid that now my life can't be okay and my future is not going to be okay. So I think that's what happens to people, is that not knowing is equated with the bad things in life. And we forget that when we don't know, that means that anything is possible. That if you want your dreams to come true, it has to happen in the unknown future. And what's also, I think people don't realize, is that there are scientific studies that show that our fear of the unknown creates stress. It increases our anxiety. It affects our working memory. And over prolonged periods, it could also affect our physical health. And over time, we also keep trying to get back to this idea of known and certainty. And then we don't really pursue the opportunities and passions in our lives because we were always looking for the familiar. And often the familiar is more the past, and it's not really forging out and creating new things in our lives.
Allison, how did you discover this way of thinking?
Well, for me, I always say I was addicted to certainty. If I didn't know what was going to happen next, I projected things were going to be bad and they weren't going to work out. And so I lived with a lot of stress and worry, and it never occurred to me that my unhappiness was from my fear of the unknown. I actually believed that one day everything in my life would work out. The balloons would come down and I would be eternally happy, safe, and secure. So I would write these stories of what needed to happen. And my biggest story that I wrote was that I was going to marry this great guy. I was going to go to law school. I was going to make a lot of money, and then my life would be safe and secure. And I remember actually walking to work my first day thinking, I've arrived. And then the next day, they were firing half the first years, and I was a first year. So I married the guy who I thought was great at the time. I went to law school, got the job. I did all those things. And then the next day, I found out that there was no security or safety because they were firing most of us. And I think in that moment, I realized that life had no certainty in it. And in a way, I fell apart. And at first, I pursued meditation and veganism and yoga, and they all were great practices. But again, as soon as something unexpected happened in my life, I would fall apart. And then one day I heard the story of the Taoist farmer, which we've spoken about before, and I was introduced to this idea of maybe. And I realized that, wait a second, that within the unknown is maybe not, right? That things could not work out, but there's another piece of it. There's another piece that there are possibilities we can't imagine. There are opportunities that we desire that can still come our way. All of a sudden, I started to realize there's a part of maybe where there's potential, there's benefits, there's everything we dream of. And so when I had this realization, my life changed because I decided to recognize uncertainty as a place of possibility. So when I was challenged or I didn't know, I looked at the unknown as my friend. And I call that maybe thinking, because maybe everything will be okay. Maybe life will change. It sounds so simple, but it's so profound when life's not going your way or things are unexpected, and you could know there's more for you in this moment, and the future could offer you new things. So it's almost like it always gives you that little glimmer of hope, even when you don't know the answer.
Allison, you and I have discussed the maybe mindset on this show before. Why do you believe it's particularly powerful for parents?
That's such a good question, because, I think you get to a point in your life where you could say, okay, I didn't get the job. I could live with that. I didn't have the money that I thought I was going to have. I could live with that. But we have a deep need for our children to be okay. And that means on some level, we need things to be a certain way. And the minute you need things to be a certain way, you will suffer. And if you go back to the teachings of the Buddha, he said, all attachment leads to suffering. And find a parent who's not attached to their child. So on some level, because we need things to be a certain way for them to be okay, then we're going to want certainty. But the more I looked at it, I saw that, okay, yes, we're attached to our children, but there's a level of suffering that doesn't come from our attachment. It comes from our fear of the unknown. So if you could handle your fear of the unknown, you will parent with less suffering, with more ease, more grace. So it's a mindset that helps our children, and I think it's the area that we need it the most, because it's the one area that it's really hard not to grasp for certainty.
Well, everything that you just described about parenting, it's the hardest job that doesn't come with a guidebook. It's trial and error, and you're really learning as you go. But when we learn about a child's illness, or we see our child who may be getting bullied, really struggling and in pain, our first reaction naturally is to go to that fear and worry. So is there a strategy or some advice that you can offer to help us stay in maybe?
One of my favorite exercises, I think it's been in every book that I've written. And it's the first time it came to me was when I thought my daughter had an illness. And I thought she had celiac disease. She was having problems with her stomach. And I went to the doctor, and I thought it was just an allergy or something. And he was listing all the things he was testing for. And he said, we're also going to test her for celiac disease. And I lost my mind. It didn't matter mentally, what anyone said to me. I didn't want her to have it. I didn't want this to be her life. And the minute we do that, the minute we demand life to be a certain way, and it's not that way in the moment, we will suffer. And so I took her home that day, and I was so stressed and worried. And that night, I couldn't sleep, and I started writing my biggest fears down. I'm afraid my daughter has celiac disease, and she will never be okay. And it doesn't matter even if intellectually you know that people live with something, right? In your heart, when it comes to your child, you almost can't control it. So after I wrote that statement, I'm afraid my child has celiac disease, I asked myself, are you absolutely certain that thought's true? And I was like, no, I'm not absolutely certain. And then I ask myself, what else is there? And that's when you bring the maybe statements in. Maybe she doesn't have it and she just has an allergy. Maybe she has it, but she could still be okay. That's the piece we forget. We forget that if life doesn't work out the way we needed it to, if something happens to our child, if their life takes a turn, it doesn't mean they're not going to find their way. It doesn't mean there's not going to be an answer, a cure, a way to live. So as I did those maybe statements, I realized that no matter what, whether she had it or she didn't, life would offer us something else. So I went from this place where that can happen, and if that happens, game over, to, okay, maybe she has it and we will figure it out. Maybe she has it and there could be great medication. Maybe she doesn't have it and it's something else. So as I did those maybe statements throughout the night, all of a sudden I felt all this space within me because I allowed for other possibilities other than my greatest fear. And that's what maybe does. It kind of gives us more ease in the moment to remind us, wait a second, life does not have to be a certain way for everything to be okay. And she ended up not having celiac disease, and she ended up with an allergy, but it didn't even matter. At that moment, I found maybe in a much deeper way. And of course, I was happy she wasn't ill, but it was just so deep to know that there are many ways that our kids could be okay. And when you start to realize that, you parent so differently. You're not as uptight. You're not as rigid. You have less stress. You have less worry. And then your child benefits it because you're in possible thinking, and they're going to be a possible thinker too.
Is this a practice that you implement whenever you're faced with a difficult situation?
Yes, all the time. The other day, I was launching the book that Maybe Everything's Okay, A Parent's Guide to Less Stress and Worry. And the night before the book launched, one of my daughters called me up and said, my throat's closing and I have a horrible allergy and I can't go to work tomorrow. And then I heard a beeping, and the other one called me and she said, I don't think I've ever been this anxious in my life. And I'm looking at this, and tomorrow I'm having this big celebration. My book is coming out, and both my children are going through this moment that they're both calling on me, that they're stuck and life's not good and they can't do what they need to do. And I automatically go to maybe. Because if you don't, you're going to be so stressed in that moment that, oh my goodness, my younger daughter is not going to find her way out of this problem she's experiencing. And my older daughter's throat's going to close and she's going to miss a week of work. But when you enter the maybe mindset, sure, you're concerned about your kids, but you realize, hey, this is a moment, things change. And in that change, things could also get better. Doesn't mean we're all doomed. Doesn't mean that things won't give us other gifts down the road. So I just went into maybe. And as the evening went by, I was calm. My older daughters, took some Benadryl. She calmed down. She ended up having a good evening. A couple of, hours later, went to work the next day. And my younger daughter just needed to talk. But I didn't get to that rigid place within myself, and I didn't make myself sick. I stayed in an open place. And I think that's the most amazing thing we could do for ourselves and our kids.
And I think when your kids see you behaving this way, they learn it, and it becomes a tool in their lives as well.
Absolutely. My children, even though they have their moments, they're maybe thinkers. And that means they're always going to go into every situation. Even if they feel stuck, at some point they're going to catch themselves and remember, wait a second, am I really stuck? I know life changes. And within change are things I don't like, but within change are things that I do like. And then they start doing the maybe practice. Maybe things can get better. Maybe my thought's not true. Maybe there are many ways to be okay. Maybe being uncomfortable in this moment will pass. Whatever they're going to do through every situation. And so eventually they calm down. And remember, too, when you calm down, you have more clarity in the moment. You could be a clear thinker. You're going to make better decisions. So you're going to make better decisions for now, and you're also going to make better decisions for the future. Because when you are hysterical, when you are desperate, because what happens when we need things to be a certain way, that's when desperation kicks in, despair kicks in. That's when our decision making, we're not at our best. But when we realize life has maybe, we're going to stay so centered, and we're going to find that place within ourselves to make the best decisions for ourselves and our children. So it is a great tool to lower your anxiety and your stress, but also make better decisions. And also, while you're in the present too, you get to see what else is left for me to experience in this moment. So you're going to enjoy your children more because you're not going to be projecting every worry into the future. So there's a lot of beautiful moments you get to experience as well.
I think it also helps us to cultivate resilience, because when you can release the fear of the unknown, you become stronger in the present moment. You can navigate what's facing you in the here and now.
Absolutely. We're not resilient because we take the past and we bring it into the moment, and then we project it into the future. And we never allow life to begin again. And with maybe, what happens is that we clear the slate. We know that this moment is new and the future could be new. And because we're not constantly stressed and anxiety ridden and thinking life is bad, we build a different kind of strength within us, a resilience to know, wait, just because I don't know doesn't mean I can't handle it. Just because I don't know doesn't mean life can't get better. And then you're in the moment and you're like, wait a second, things can change. And then you have that strength because you're not giving it away to the future. You're so powerful in the moment, you gain the strength to live today and make the best decisions. And over time, you build that resilience because you are moving forward in your life, not backwards.
Allison, why was it so important to you to write this book for parents?
Because I think out of all the areas in my life, it helped me with parenting the most. And I just felt this deep need, because I also had a deep need for me to share it, because when something helps me, you know me, I want to tell everybody. But also I've worked with a lot of parents, and I've seen parents with children who are disabled. I've seen parents with children that are sick, that are getting bullied, that are having difficulties in school. And I've seen them use the maybe mindset. And again, it alleviated stress and worry, but also allowed them to help their children work out their problems. And there's also not just those things. We also, the Surgeon General just came out with a report and said that parent stress, he issued a health warning about it, that 74% of parents are afraid to send their children to school because of gun violence. And 41% of parents are so stressed they can't get out of bed. 48% of parents are so stressed they're overwhelmed. So when you look at this, parents need help. And they need help from the government. They need help from programs. They need help from their communities. But they also need a mindset that's going to help them get through the day. And so I think when you're looking at all these things that are happening in the world, right, it's very easy to say it could never get better. But again, we don't know. And so the book was really important because it gives people hope. It gives people hope in the unknown. And there's nobody that needs it more than parents. Because again, the most important thing is our kids are okay. And so with maybe we remind ourselves that, okay, just because I don't like the way the world is today, just because there are so many problems, it doesn't mean that the world can't get better. And how can I participate? And how could my children participate? That's interesting too. When you sell your child maybe thinking, they're going to go out in the world, maybe it's real. You see things for what they are in the moment, but you also know, because you don't know the future, maybe things can change. So you're also bringing up kids that I think are going to engage in more possibilities and dream and vision for a new world. So I think it's important for parents to suffer less, for children to suffer less, but for everybody to dream of a world filled with new possibilities.
And Allison, I think that is such a wonderful point that you made, because I hope that parents implement this teaching into their own lives, but I hope that they share it with their children, because I didn't learn these things until I was middle age. And then I had to undo all of the harmful, self-limiting beliefs that I had. And I would really love to see the next generation of children coming up believing in what's possible, believing in anything, and having those dreams. And I think the maybe mindset is a wonderful way to achieve that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, even you think about what the greatest inventions that have ever happened there, they started with a ridiculous dream. Like sometimes you think about the Wright brothers, right? What made them think that they were going to be able, to fly a plane? The most amazing things in the world happen because someone believes in something that doesn't exist yet. And it might seem impossible, but the unknown future is unlimited. So all is possible. So yes, I believe that if you give your children this mindset, they will go out and they will dream and they will create things that this world needs desperately. Mm-hmm. And they will always try to make the world a better place because they'll believe in maybe.
Yeah, because they didn't focus on what could go wrong. They believed in what could go right. And that's the game changer. That's what changes everything.
Yeah, what's possible in this moment and what's possible in the future. So many people tell you what's not possible in the world. And I always say that despair is an addiction to certainty. Like nobody knows. Don't let anybody steal your hope. It's your divine right to be hopeful, and it's your divine right to dream, and it's your divine right to seek out the life that you truly desire. And the world sometimes dims our light because it tells us, no, that is not possible. But with maybe you realize that nobody knows, and because nobody knows, like I said, it's an unlimited playing field. And for me, the maybe mindset helps me stay there because when I get afraid, when I get worried, when I get negative, I get to realize that those things are not absolute either. My fear, people think their fears are absolute, but they're not. That's the beauty of uncertainty. You get to look at it and say, wait, my doubt's not absolute. My negative is not absolute. What else is there? There's another side of maybe filled with possibilities.
I think an important thing for us to remember is that those who are trying to dim your light, they're living in fear. They're not living in maybe, and they want to keep you in a state of fear as well. They don't want you to see the possibilities. So I think that that's something we should all keep in mind.
Absolutely. They're just addicted to certainty. They're selling you a future, and they don't know either. And so again, like every time you get stuck, you get worried, you get stressed, you go back to maybe and you remember that the unknown is filled with hope and no one gets to steal your light. It's really beautiful and gorgeous. And sometimes, some days I live in maybe, I don't have to think about it. But there are other days I could see something in the news, or like I said, my child could call me up, and all of a sudden I feel that negativity. I feel that stuckness. I feel like, well, how could things get better? And I feel really challenged. And then I question it. I question the fear, and I go back to the maybe, and I always remember. And my entire life has been so expansive. And I have more joy, I have more gratitude, and I'm able to just live a better life overall because I don't let my fear of the unknown dictate my decisions. Instead, I make uncertainty my best friend, and I know that what I seek is seeking me, and that everything I dream of is possible in the unknown.
The book is Maybe Everything is Okay, A Parent's Guide to Less Stress and Worry. If you'd like to learn more about Allison and her work, you can visit AllisonCarmen.com. Allison, thank you so much for joining us.
Joan, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided is the opinion of our guest and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, CYACYL.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read our digital articles, and be sure to subscribe to our mailing list. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.